Hey everybody, my name is Amy Miller. I'm an alcoholic. Hey. My sobriety birthday is January the 1st, 2003. And my home group is the primary purpose group of Wilson. And I have recently switched over in the last, 6 to 7 months. And so I'm still getting used to, and after a 14-year marriage with a group, it's kind of hard to break it. So every time I introduce myself, I always want to say I came to believe group. But anyway, so we meet on Monday night and Thursday night. We meet from 7 to 8. The first and third Monday, we study out of the Big Book. The second Monday, we study the step that coincides with the month. And no, that's a lie. We study, we have a topic out of A literature. And then it's the fourth Monday, we study the tradition that coincides with the month, and there's a fifth Monday, we study A history. And then every Thursday night's an open speaker meeting. And many of you fine people, have been esteemed guests at our group, and it's an absolute honor and privilege to be able to come and share my life and my recovery and my relationship with God with you guys tonight. And thank you so much for that wonderful introduction, Heidi. I mean, it's like, you get built up on this like, oh my God, can you live up to the expectation, right? Like, there is none. But, I was sitting there thinking when I walked in, and I wanted to give Steve the credit for this, but I walked in and I see two beautiful butterflies up here on the stage. And I was like, oh, Steve, thank you so much. You knew that butterflies were my big thing, and you put them up there, and he's like, no, buddy, I didn't put it up there. And I was like, classic. And then he's like, the church did it. And, and actually I want to correct that. I believe God did that, 100%. And for me, what a lot of people walked in, they may have not even noticed the butterflies up there. But this is how Alcoholics Anonymous has transformed my life and my idea of what miracles are and my ideas of how God speaks to me. This week, for some reason, I've just really kind of been off. I don't know if it has something to do with, it seems that when I speak, I have just an off week, I don't feel very spiritual. Everything's crashing, da-da-da-da-da. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough. What am I going to go up there and say? They don't want to listen to me, da-da-da. That whole argument goes on in my head. I don't feel good. I woke up last night with a bad headache. And the list goes on. I can be a very dramatic alcoholic, as you can well imagine. And butterflies are my big thing. I have butterflies all over my, tattooed all over my back. And I believe that they're very symbolic of a changed life. Al-Anon uses it as their symbol of whatever their symbol is. But y'all would know that better than I probably. But anyway, and I walked in and I saw that, and I said, what a powerful way for God to say, you are a changed woman because of me and because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And all you've got to do is what you've been doing for the last 15 years is showing up and moving out of the way and let me use you and speak through you, and it's going to be okay, and you are enough. Your story is enough. Your message is enough because it comes from me. And, and when I came to you guys, I didn't think that way. I didn't think the way I had a relationship with God was that one that was I would bargain with and I would plead to, God, get me out of this mess, and I won't never do it again. I blamed God for a lot of things. I was a huge blamer because everybody was responsible for my crappy existence but me. I was that one that would go to church on Sunday and I'd hear the preacher preach, and I knew I could not be that lily white perfect person that he wanted me to be. And I knew that all of my little friends that were hanging out with me in church were judging me because of the things that I was doing, but I knew what they were doing, and so how dare you judge me? And so I figured, if you judge me, God judge me. And I knew I had thought about or had committed breaking all the commandments, and I just, I had to kind of just wash my hands of that. And so when I came back to you guys introduced me not to God, but you introduced me to a relationship with God. because that's what I didn't know. I didn't know how to have a relationship with a human being, much less with a spirit that I had no clue what I thought was. I mean, I grew up with the belief of what my mother and the church had taught me, but you guys taught me what God could be to me, And my God loves me enough and thinks that I'm special enough that he gave me butterflies. So, anyway, so it's really good to be here with you guys tonight. And it's amazing how a matter of, 5 minutes and I feel different. And again, that's what you guys taught me. My first sponsor, who's now my current sponsor, when I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, my emotions and my feelings dictated and controlled every single action I took or I didn't take. I mean, you talk about someone that ran on their feelings. I was the queen of it. And I was very dramatic, as you, again, can imagine. And I didn't feel like doing a whole lot of things, and so I just didn't do a whole lot of stuff. And my sponsor turned me on to the idea. She said, Amy, if you will just take some simple actions that I believe will work, you don't even have to believe that they'll work. If you'll just take some simple actions based in spiritual principles, I promise you the way you feel will change. Your feelings are neither right nor wrong. They just are. You can't control them. You can't stop them. Feel them and roll on. Don't take an action based in them. And so I'm like, okay, I intelligently understand what you're saying, but what do you mean by that? And she said, well, okay, you don't feel like going to that meeting tonight because you're sick. You got a headache. Get up, get in the car, drive to that meeting. Well, I won't drive in a car at that point. Get in her car and let her drive me to the meeting. And by the end of the meeting, I promise you'll probably more than likely feel better. And it was an amazing thing. Every time I did that, I felt better, She said, you owe Onslow County a whole lot of money. You're going to prison if you don't pay that money. I didn't feel like paying them their money back. You can imagine. I mean, here I had no job and I owed them about, 30 grand. Don't just kind of come up with that money off the cuff with no job. She said, you're going to go get a job and we're going to pay them back. And I was like, how am I going to do that? She says, we're going to mail it to them one check at a time. And it took me a year and a half, but I paid that money back based on that principle of I'm going to one check at a time. And it was just those simple actions that you guys taught me that put my butt in the car today to drive to come to you guys tonight, regardless of how I felt. And amazingly enough, like I said, in a matter of 5 minutes, I feel all right. Well, let me back up. In 15 minutes after Steve prayed for me, I was starting to feel better. And then, of course, obviously now I feel a whole lot better and a whole lot different. So thank you so much for that. Thank you for that opportunity to be able to experience that. So anyway, so a little bit about me. I am from an alcoholic home. My dad was an alcoholic. I call him that. He called himself that for 31 years. Many of you people had the opportunity to spend a great deal of time with my dad and watch and influence his life. In fact, actually, my dad has got a cup that Wallace had drawn a picture on off of a coffee cup during one. I guess it was a meeting that either he spoke at or Shorty had spoken at, and that coffee cup sits in my mom and dad's place where it has all their little mementos and knickknacks and stuff like that. And so you guys have been influencing my life ever since I was 14 years of age. At 14, my dad got sober. He went to treatment. And who I was before that happened was I was a child that just didn't believe I was enough. I didn't believe I was pretty enough. I didn't believe I was smart enough. I didn't think I was intelligent enough. I was not enough. I don't know what enough was, but whatever it was, I wasn't it. And I always wanted more. Suffer from more. If you gave me a slice of cake, I wanted the whole cake. If you gave me a piece of candy, I wanted the whole box. I mean, just that kind of mentality. If you told me one aspirin would make me feel better, well, can I take 3? I meant, why not? Let's just have more. And so that mentality was when alcohol finally went into my system, it exploded. I don't think I ever blamed myself for my dad being an alcoholic. I wasn't one of those children that thought that I was the cause of any of that. It was, he wasn't very violent, but what he was real mouthy. And a lot of my childhood I don't remember. I don't know if it was because of my drinking, if it was because of some of the trauma that happened in my life years later, but I just don't remember a whole great deal about it. I just remembered that he drank a lot, my mom yelled a lot, and him and my brother liked to get into little altercations. And my brother was 9 years older than I, or he is 9 years older than I, and he absolutely, I thought, hated me. My dad would discipline him, and then he would come in the room and I would be his punching bag. And so I grew up being controlled by an older brother. So when alcohol would come into my picture, I was 14, maybe a little bit over, 14 and a half. My dad had just gone to treatment. And he was the type that he didn't hide his liquor. We lived on a farm. And he didn't hide his liquor, but what he would do is he'd stroll it all over the farm. So whenever he decided to take a drink, he would have it there. And he was a 2/5 a day, never took a sober breath, 4 rows drinker. That's what he drank. But for whatever reason, he had left these tall Colt 45s out in the barn. And I found those. They had been there so long they had discolored. And I'm sure he just threw them off of the truck and forgot they were there. I found them. Intuitively, I knew what I needed to do. And that was go hide them in my room and wait until I found the right victim and we could become women. And I found that victim. It would take me like 6 months of plotting and planning. And I found her and invited her over from school one day to come and spend the weekend with me. My dad smoked full flavored Winston cigarettes. We stole about half a pack of those. I knew that smoking and drinking went together, but what I did not know was the etiquettes of eating and drinking. So before we go to have this drinking experience, what we did was we had a bowl of cereal. And let me explain to you what my definition of a bowl of cereal is. Remember, I am all about more, right? Very grandiose. So we had a bowl of cereal, and this bowl was like a mixing bowl full of like a half a box of cereal and a half a gallon of milk. That was a bowl of cereal. 2 things I absolutely loved. Carolina had a beautiful blue trash can in my room. Second thing was my favorite cereal was blueberry cereal, which is the kind that turns your milk Carolina blue. I had a bowl of this cereal. So we went, locked ourselves in my room, opened up the window so we could blow the smoke out, and took out those hot Colt 45s, and we cheered, we're going to become women, popped the top, took a couple of pulls off of it, and I sprayed the inside of that trash can the same color on the inside as it was on the out. And I let that stuff and poured it right down the drain, and I said, oh my God, why did my dad just spend 28 days locked up in treatment behind something that tasted that god-awful? And I can remember this intelligent conversation. If I've got to drink that to become whatever this thing is he is, I'll never be one of them. Never. And that lasted until I found Sun Country wine coolers. And I'm kind of dating myself. I understand that, because if you know what Sun Country wine coolers are, you are not in your 30s. But anyway, they had the 2-liter bottles, and I had my 2-liter, you had your 2-liter, and I was glad to share yours, but don't mess with mine. And that was just my mentality about that. And when the magic of alcohol would happen for me, and what that magic would look like is constantly, and I don't mean this in a schizophrenic manner, so if there's a psychiatrist out there, you don't have to diagnose me this. I promise you it's probably the only diagnosis I don't have. that you talked in my head all the time, and you told me I wasn't good enough, I wasn't pretty enough, I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't enough. And what that alcohol would do is it would shut you up in my head just long enough that I could be in your presence. Not that I thought I was better than you or worse than you, but that I could just be. And for me, that was a very difficult place, was just to be. I didn't like who I was. I could not stand my own skin. Not that I even knew what my own skin felt like, because I was the chameleon. I was constantly looking for what you needed me to be. And God help you, if you were a man, I was more than obliged to become whatever you needed me to be. My relationship with women was such that I hated women. Women were my competition. They were my enemy. I felt like either I wanted what they had, or I was petrified they were going to take what was mine. And the best thing we could do is just leave each other alone. And that way I don't have to deal with you don't have to deal with me, and we're all good. And men, it was just real crazy. But anyway, that would be not how I immediately started drinking, but that would be kind of pretty much in jest when the magic would happen for me. And it was shortly thereafter, probably in high school, when that would happen. The truth of all that matter is while I thought all those things, on the outside, I was a cheerleader. I was in my top 5 percentile of my class. I was a teacher's pet. I was on fast track to going to college. The only one in my family that would ever make it to college. That was who I was, but I didn't think and feel that inside. And it would take step work and a sponsor to point all that stuff out to me, and a constant sponsorship to remind me constantly that I am enough, because I still struggle with that even today on a lot of different levels. But I would go through high school. My dad would again be in AA, and so I started kind of coming to open speaker meetings a little bit, so I knew who y'all were. Y'all were old. I mean, real old. I mean, I realize you were like 10 years younger than I am right now, but you were old. I don't know what that says about me now, but anyway, you ever started doing that kind of, wherever your age is, start thinking about how old your parents were when you were a certain age, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know. Anyway, it's kind of crazy to think like that, because my parents, when they were my age, were like nature. But right now I feel like I'm like 12 sometimes. So anyway, I act like it too, so it's all good, right? But so I would end up in college. I decided, or in high school, I decided what I needed to do was I needed to get married, because I'm a blamer. Mom and Daddy are the reason for my crappy existence. I'm a blamer. I need to get away from Mom and Daddy so they can go do their AA thing and I can be gone. And so what I decided to do while I was even going to college, there was a man that I had met on spring break. And he was a Marine, and I had this thing for men in military uniforms. And I convinced this man after a year and a half that what we needed to do was get married. And that was going to be my out plan. That was my game plan. And so we got married. I flew back home from Cleveland and to inform my mother and father that not only did I now have a boyfriend, but they had a son-in-law. And you can imagine how that went over with them. Their only baby girl, who was supposed to have the Princess Diana wedding, eloped and got married in her jeans and a Cleveland Brown sweatshirt. Not exactly how they planned it. And, my mother started out with that, well, we'll get this annulled. And I was like, oh, no, we won't. And my relationship with my mom was such that I indignantly defied everything she wanted. If she wanted me to go left, even if I wanted to go left, I was going to go right just to spite her. And I would start that whole game. It would take me 6 months of trying to prove her wrong. And finally she gave up, and I went off to Cleveland to make my new life when I graduated from Peace. And he got out of the Marine Corps. It'd take me 1 month to turn around and come back home and say, you know what, I think I messed up. And what that would start would be a pattern that I do for like the next 15 years of going off with this real indignant attitude of, I got this, you can't tell me what to do, I'm grown. And it would fast track burnout quick. And then I'm coming back home, Mom and Daddy would rescue me, put me back on my feet financially, get me squared away. And just like the traditions talk about it, whoever pays the piper calls the tune. And inevitably my mother would call that tune. Well, we're paying for this, so you're going to do that. Oh, no, you ain't going to tell me what to do. I'm grown. I mean, I realize you're paying for my college and my food and my insurance and my car, but you ain't going to tell me what to do. Here I go again. And quick, fast, I'd mess it up. Until this last time they said, you know what, Amy, we don't care if you die in the street, we don't care if you rot in prison, we're done with you. And it would take me 15 years of dragging them through pure hell for them to get to that point. Today, even though I have had an opportunity, and I'll get to talk about that, to make some major amends to my mother and father for the actions that I took on them, it still embarrasses me how I treated them, And what makes it even more real for me is when I, as a mother, am living through some of the stuff that I put my mom and dad through. It puts it into a whole new light to live through the hell that I put them through. So I would go on, we'd get an annulment, we'd get a divorce. I would start to question my sanity at this point. And so what I had heard is that Al-Anon would help me fix my daddy, right? Again, what I heard was not what was said, but what I heard. So I started going to Al-Anon. Because remember, my daddy is my problem. So if I can fix my daddy, who, mind you, by now is like 10 years sober, hadn't been drinking, but I'm going to fix him. And Al-Anon is not that. It's a beautiful program to teach me how to live with me, not how to live with my daddy. Anyway, I started going to Al-Anon, went to a retreat, met one of y'all at that retreat, fell immediately in lust that weekend, and we started dating. And came back, and I had enough stories that I laid out the law for him. I said, look, what do you think? You think I'm an alcoholic? Now, what I heard this man tell me is that, yes, I think you're an alcoholic. I think that would be that much more time we could spend together. That's that much more things we'd have in common. I think it would be a fantastic idea for you to be an alcoholic. Now, what he actually said was you might have a problem drinking, which I... Not what I heard. So I came in and I told everybody I was an alcoholic. Now, to my surprise, this man had something I had never heard of or been introduced to, and it was called a sponsor. And his sponsor, I had just graduated from college with a degree in mathematics, prided myself in being able to recognize and count simple numbers. I knew that there were 12 steps up there, right? Well, his sponsor had graduated from an abstract mathematical college because he said there were 13 steps up there. And if he messed with me for that first year, he was practicing, which was not a good thing, that 13th step. And so, to my surprise, this man came and sat me down and had this conversation. And this is actually what he said. He said, you're a newcomer, so you need to come in here. You need to get grounded with the women in the program. You need to develop a relationship with God. You need to work the steps. And after a year, when you've had a spiritual experience, when we can get back together and discuss whatever's going on and see what's there. Not what I heard. What I heard was you took my man from me and he dumped me. And I was indignantly mad with you people. That was my first resentment towards Alcoholics Anonymous. And, but I was intelligent. I was a smart woman. I knew he wasn't the only man that was in here. I knew that all did not have sponsors. And I knew that some of y'all that had them, you weren't listening. So what I can tell you is I was a 21-year-old hot mess in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I am sure there is no one in this vicinity that fits that description. I am unique. I know I am unique in that area. Not that it wasn't written about in some of our literature. I was still unique in that area. That was kind of my story, and I stuck around there for 3 months and decided what I needed to do was go work at a treatment facility. I tell you, that didn't work out well. And then after 3 months of working there, I decided what I needed to do. And I love movies. I absolutely love movies. I believe that I could have made a fantastic Scarlett O'Hara. I just believe I was born a century too late. So at that point, now this was 6 month sober thinking. Now I want to see if y'all can follow my train of thought. My favorite movies at that time were Navy SEALs, Top Gun, and Under Siege. The common thread of all three of those things, U.S. Navy. So what I need to do is I need to join the U.S. Navy so that I can find Charlie Sheen, Tom Cruise, or Steven Seagal. Because then my life is going to be perfect, right? I mean, I'm sober now, so that's what I need. I need this man in my life. And I did that. I went to stayed sober sober through basic training. Came home for 2 weeks for my leave. I went to 2 Alcoholics Anonymous meetings in that 2 weeks. One was to pick up my 9-month chip that I honestly earned. And the second one was to come back and kind of say to you guys, you're making just too much about this whole changing my playmates and playground situation. Because the bar drinker who I love a bar. I love the lights, the smell, the drama, the chaos. I love dancing. I love music. I still, to this day, love all that stuff. I have just spent the last 2 weeks with my new boyfriend, the Navy recruiter, at the bar. He was drinking whatever he was drinking. I was drinking Cokes. We were dancing, listening to the music. Y'all are making too much of this. And with that mindset, I set off to go to Meridian, Mississippi. God rest Jim Holmes' soul. I wish I'd have met him then. Met some people on the plane, and they invited me to go to the base bar. Now, based in my thinking, which was I'd just spent the last 2 weeks in a bar and I didn't drink, I said, I'll go with you guys. And I hate beer more than beer. I hate Bud beer. God knows I hated any kind of Bud beer. Because I'm so egotistical, when I acquired the name Miller, I would drink myself because I thought it was pretty cool. And I would drink Ice House because it, at that point, was the highest alcohol content beer, and I thought it was a pretty cool name. Even named a cat after it. But other than that, I hated beer. And the waitress asked the guy next to me what he'll have. He said, I'll have a Bud Light. And she looked at me and she said, what will you have? And I said, I'll have what he's having. I never once thought about this isn't a good idea. Never once thought about, this is probably really screwing up my life. I'm an alcoholic and I don't need to be drinking. Really kind of in the back of my mind, I didn't drink the way my dad drank, which was every day. So I really might not be one of y'all. It was just a situational situation. And you know what I'm saying. You can understand, you can follow that train of thought. So I started drinking, and what that would look like was there was, for the next 4 months, not a day would go by that I wasn't intoxicated and drunk, like at some point during that day. Now let me explain to you, when I say that drunk, I don't mean like I'm a little bit inebriated. I drank to one or two places. I either drank to pass out or I drank to black out. And I got there quick, fast, and in a hurry. I'm that person that walks in and starts drinking shots of tequila or shots of whatever and chasing it with stuff because I want to get to oblivion quick. I'd IV alcohol if you could have figured out how to intravenously give it to me. I wanted to be anywhere but where I was at. And I start at this point suffering some actions behind some consequences behind my actions. I start waking up in stairwells, passed out, waking up in ditches, passed out, waking up in barracks I didn't belong in, passed out, and I start going before the captain for all that behavior. And and at that point, I'm top of my class, and the petty officers would come to me and they would say, I don't understand how you do it, Jones. I'm like, what are you talking about, sir? They're like, we see you in this bar every single night. You are drunk every single night, yet you come in and you're my top student. How do you do that? And I would say, I don't know, sir. I'd feed their ego of how wonderful their instructions were and this and that and the other. But the truth of the matter, and it took me a long time to get real honest about that. The truth of the matter was I sold myself short. I was a college graduate. I should have been in officer training school. But because I took the test one time and I missed it by like 2 points, I said, you know what? I'll just enlist. I'll show you. And so I sold myself short and I enlisted. In fact, the top 4 people in that class were drunk at that bar every single night. And, we had our little pack. I graduated top of my class, which afforded me the opportunity to pick my duty station. And I came up to the little podium, and he had his little notebook open. It had all the little places I could have gone. And most of them, I'm single. So I'm supposed to be going over to like Italy, Spain, Greece. Really cool places I could have gone. And there was one that was that was stateside, and it was in Coronado, California. And it had the name in front of it. It was SDV Team 1. I was like, SDV Team 1? I was like, well, what is that? He said, SEAL Delivery Team 1. I said, SEAL as in the Navy SEALs? He said, yep. I said, thank you, God, for bringing me Charlie Sheen. I'll take that one. And that is how I made intelligent decisions about my life, looking for Charlie Sheen. God forbid I did not find him, because then I'd have been on the news. What a disaster. Would have probably met him in Alcoholics Anonymous. Imagine that one. 13 stepping him the whole way. Anyway, so I ended up going to California. My college roommate was already in California. I had already corrupted her in college, so she picked me up at the airport, and we hit the bars. And she had already found the best bars. And what I can tell you real quickly about Coronado, California is that this little Nash County pig farm backwoods southern country girl got exposed to a whole lot of things in Coronado, California I did not know existed or had never heard of. And my alcoholism went to a whole new level. I met my second ex-husband in California, and he was in the Navy as well. He was a Seabee. And, I can tell you today, because of Alcoholics Anonymous and God and a lot of change in a really, really long time, I'm able to tell you a better story about my second, a more accurate story about my second ex-husband. Today, I'm actually grateful to that man for a whole lot. We're actually able to be friends today, and that came from a long, 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 long time. Probably about, I guess I was probably maybe 8 or 9 years sober before we could ever even be in the same room or talk to each other. But prior to any of that, he was my reason for being the biggest victim you'd ever laid your eyes on. There were 3 people in my life that I blamed literally everything on. One of them was my mother, one of them was my father, and the next one was my ex-husband. And they were my biggest resentments and my biggest enablers, actually. And prior to my involvement with this man, if a woman were to come to me and were to tell me that she was having a relationship, anything other than being treated like a queen or being treated like the lady that she deserves to be treated, if he was putting his hands on her or speaking to her in a bad manner, I would, kind of judge her. I would say some ugly things like, don't you realize you deserve more than that? Why would you let a man treat you that way? And I'd start I hope a man puts his hands on me, and I'd start the whole neck rolling and that kind of indignant attitude. And what I can tell you is that my second ex-husband gifted me with the ability to be able to talk to women today and them tell me that story, and I look at them with love and understanding. I say, I absolutely understand why you stayed and why you did what you did. I did that, and I love you, and you can learn to love yourself, and you can learn to overcome that stuff, and put it behind you. And then if you do the step work, the book talks about it. The book talks about healing relationships and particularly family relationships that are seem impossible to heal. And it took a long time, but I'm a hard study, and God has done that with me and my ex. But anyway, so we fast. 3 months I knew him and had convinced him that we needed to get married, and so this time I got to fly home and tell my mother and father that not only did I have a boyfriend, but they had a new son-in-law, and oh, by the way, your second grandchild is on the way. My brother had already had one, and by this point, my mom and dad threw their hands up, and they're like, what, you're grown, you're on your own, you made your bed, you lay in it. And they had no idea what was really truly going on, the violence or the drinking. He was my my buddy. He was the one that he was drinking, and when everybody else was passed out, we were still rolling. And so when I got pregnant, I did stop drinking. I wish I could stand up here and tell you I was sober, but I cannot do that. But I did stop drinking. For whatever reason, I became convinced of fetal alcohol syndrome. And, why other things didn't scare me at that point, I don't know. But I did stop drinking. And we had our beautiful son, who today is now 23 and has, maybe 2 or 3 months sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I'm really, really proud of him. It's been a long, long, long journey for him to be such a young age. He's gone through a whole lot more at 24 than I had, and that was one of the things, I used to always say I wasn't as bad as my dad. And, come to find out I was worse than my dad. And I think that I went further than my dad, and I think that same thing holds true for my children. My children went far faster, further than I did at their age, which really kind of actually scares me, because if the cycle doesn't stop, what's for the next generation, So I'm really grateful that Alcoholics Anonymous is still here, and it also speaks to the volumes of making sure that we're still here to carry the message, and to carry the message that Bill and Bob laid out, because it's not going anywhere, the problem is not going anywhere. Or actually, the illness is not going anywhere. So the solution needs to continue to be here. But anyway, the first 4 years of our marriage, was very volatile. Was filled with chaos, and we got out of the out of the Navy, and we moved back. Because the West Coast was the problem, right? It was the women in the West Coast. It was the other stuff in the West Coast. It was the West Coast was the problem. We need to get back to the East Coast. And, I need to get back with Mom and Daddy, because Mom and Daddy always fixed it, and it didn't. The chaos just continued. And then after 4 years, and having my son and having my daughter, who is now 22, beautiful mini-me, and I finally, after one particular bad evening, picked up the phone and called 911 and had him arrested. And what that would start would be the ability to now drop my children off at my mom and dad's, and I'm able to run the street and do what I want to do. Because being married to a controlling man, it kind of kept me in check a little bit, because he wasn't going to allow his wife to be but so out of control. And so it kind of kept me the reins down. But now he's out of the picture, and I'm like, Katie, bar the door. The kids are with Mom and Daddy. They were great to have the kids. Brothers playing in a rock band. Instant back star stadiums success, rolled up in there, and it was on. And 4 weeks, everybody's coming to me wanting to discuss my behavior, and I ended up in treatment for the first time after that. And I had an experience in there where I started. I was willing to negotiate the fact that I was not quite right in the brain. I'll buy that. I'm suicidal at this point, so I was willing to, do something with that. But the fact that my drinking, I wasn't willing to talk about that. And so I had an experience in there the first night of where I couldn't do what I wanted to do, when I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. And I said, you know what, maybe there's more to this alcoholism than I'm giving credit to. And so I ended up in the doctor's office the next morning, and I told him I had a problem and I wanted to address it. And so I ended up going to the psych side in the morning and the CD side in the evening. And we started going to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I came out and had that mindset of my relationship with God was that, and I honestly believe this, I believe in being fair, right? I believe, my sponsor and I had many conversations about fair. I believe that if you got something, it was my entitled right to have the exact same thing or better, right? So I knew that Bill had the bright light. I knew that Moses had the burning bush. I knew that other people had talked about the angels at the bed and hovering over them and healing them. And where's my angel? Where's my burning bush? Where's my bright light? I hadn't seen none of those. And I was pretty indignantly upset with God about that. And, you know, the fact that God has a sense of humor has got to exist, because the fact he did not strike me dead, I don't understand why. But after a month sober in that mentality with God, I kept hearing y'all say, you know, the part about it, seek God out and he will show himself, right? So I am that one that is ballsy enough to have a conversation with God, which kind of looks like getting in the middle of the floor on your hands and knees, screaming, crying, snot slinging, going, God, where are you? Show me if you're there, and the whole dramatic effect. And went to bed that night, fully just knew God was going to show up. I mean, how could he not, right? I mean, I called him out. I called him on the table and I was like, show up, big boy. I mean, you know, woke up the next morning, he wasn't there. I was mad. Woo, I was mad. Mad I was alive. Mad God didn't show up. Mad I'm sober. And so I went to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that morning, and kind of pretty much, I won't go into detail about it, but pretty much kind of like the butterfly situation. You know, it was events that happened at that Alcoholics Anonymous meeting that only God could have placed and made happen. And I became convinced at that point that that was God showing up in my life with gentle reminders that, hey, I am here. I do care about you. I do love you. You're worth saving. Why don't you just shut up and take some direction? And, you know, I wish I could tell you that was my anniversary and, you know, I got sober and life came on to be wonderful. That did not happen for me. What it was like Bill Wilson's Doggerel Cathedral experience. It was a really cool spiritual experience. But it wasn't enough to keep me sober. I did exactly what the book talks about. I failed to enlarge upon my spiritual relationship with God. So for the next 4 years, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm doing the do. I'm a meeting-making fool. I'm going to all these meetings and busy doing lots of stuff, you know, and angry. Oh, my God, I was so angry, you know, and somebody would suggest that I work a step, and I would suggest that I had, in real colorful language. And I, you know, changing wasn't anything I understood, because, again, remind you, fear and my feelings dictated and controlled everything I did. I could not move past that. The ex-husband came back. He started going to AA. His name is Adrian. My name is Amy, A&A. We belonged in Alcoholics Anonymous. I meant we're the A&A couple. I meant God-inspired, right? And so everything was great that first year. It was like a honeymoon. It was that second year I started sponsoring women, and he kind of wanted to help me out a little bit with that things kind of went a little bit sideways. And I became very angry and very ill and very discontented and very resentful. And for the next 3 years, that would continually increase until finally he left. And when he left, if you'd asked me, I would have told you that was exactly what I wanted to have happen. But the moment he left, fear set in on me in a way I cannot explain. I was absolutely crippled. And I had no relationship with God, no relationship with a sponsor, no relationship with Alcoholics Anonymous. And I stayed around here for the next 6 months, ill and angry, and this black cloud would come in on me. And God forbid, I was going to these meetings at that point that were, does anybody have a problem staying sober today? And me. And, always was about me. And I did the only thing I knew to do. I didn't drink, but I got into another relationship. And sadly, the only person at that point that would have anything to do with me would be a newcomer. And when that newcomer would relapse, I would go out right behind him. And in the next 3.5 weeks, I would do things that, by all rights, I should be dead or locked up behind. It was rough. And when I picked up the phone and called 911 and explained to them that I wanted to commit suicide, now let me explain to you, have you never done that? What is getting ready to happen, okay? Anything and everything with lights is getting ready to show up in a pair. I mean, we had the cop car. We had the sheriff, the highway patrol, and the police. Because I couldn't do it in the county. I had to do it in the city. So everybody showed up. We had the fire truck. We had the ambulances. I even believe that the pizza delivery guy showed up. It was crazy. And I couldn't run out the back door because there wasn't a back door to that motel. And the little lady walked in and she said, did someone call 911 for help? And I said, yes, ma'am, that was me. And so what that would start would be 4 different treatment facilities I would go to for the next 90 days. And I wish I could tell you that I came out and I stand before you the woman that I am today. That did not happen for me. What happened is after my 4th treatment facility, I came out with this real indignant attitude. I realized I owe Onslow County a lot of money. I know I'm looking at prison time. I have no job, no car, no place to live, no nothing, but I'm not living in a halfway house. I don't know where you think I'm living, but it ain't gonna be in a halfway house. I lived with my mother and father for 1 week, and I said, you know what? I am now willing to negotiate the street if you get me away from these people. And so that's how I ended up in the halfway house. And thank God for Ruth Parrish, dear sweet Al-Anon soul. She opened up her halfway house that she was running to me. And I stayed in there for 1 week shy of a year. Absolutely hated every day that I absolutely needed to be there. And thank God for that place. Because it was the humbling I needed. I can tell you that. I wish I could tell you that I got my sponsor and the home group that I ended up getting, and I stand before you, I'm the woman today. That did not happen for me. What I did was I started going to the same meetings I had been going to, hanging out with the same people I'd been hanging out with, and I got into another relationship, right? Because he had 9 months. I realized he relapsed and he only had 90 days, but he had 9 months. And I had for years. I only have 90 days now, but I'd had for years. So that didn't make us complete newcomers, right? When he left me 2 weeks later for a woman with a car, I was devastated. I was like, I'm done. I am done. And I tell you that story because for 3 reasons. 1, I think it's funny. 2, because it's very true. And 3 is a gentle reminder to me that I cannot judge what someone's bottom or what's going to bring them to their moment of clarity. Because to a normal, if there is such, alcoholic, almost dying, looking at prison time, losing your children, losing your family, losing the self-respect you have, losing everything that could possibly worthwhile mean anything, should be enough to push anybody to the bottom. No. Being left by a guy I was not in love with that really wasn't that good looking, if you want me to get real honest, for a woman with a car. That was my bottom. I was like, I'm done. And there was this woman that had always petrified me because she stood for the program Alcoholics Anonymous, and I invited her into my life, and there the journey began. Thank God she was plugged into the same kind of Alcoholics Anonymous I know that exists in this home group. Some of the people that are here and have been here that are not in this room tonight have been very, very powerful influences in my sobriety. And, God rest Richard Page's soul. I love that man dearly and miss him, and never can walk in here what I don't think about him and the impact and the power that he had in my life while he was alive, and even in his death. Tom. I think this is the first time I've spoken that he wasn't here. So those kinds of people that have influenced my life and my sobriety still live because I still remember them, and we still talk about them, and we still have stories to tell about them, and they're still very vibrant and alive within our spirit. But anyway, I did go on, obviously, to get sober. I ended up paying Onslow County their money back because my sponsor suggested I got a job. And so today, real quickly, I am a member of a home group. I sponsor 3 women. My children, my son, like I said, he's in recovery. And I'm hopeful, but I'm understanding, if that makes any sense. Probably one of the hardest things I've had to walk through in my journey is to watch my child and be completely powerless over helping them, and to give that child over to God and to you guys and step back. And I can tell you that did not come from without having to struggle with that quite a bit. And today, real quick, the ex-husband, I told you we kind of made amends, and my mother and father. So I, about 5 or 6 years, 7, actually probably now it's more like 7 or 8 years ago, started involving my relationship with my dad and such that we started doing things together. And we didn't have a very close relationship, and I started going to NASCAR events, and he taught me how to ride motorcycles, and a relationship was born of where we started going places, riding motorcycles, and so when he died 3 years ago as a result of a motorcycle accident, it left me in charge of my mother, who is now in stages of frontal temporal dementia, and who's bedridden, who doesn't talk, doesn't do anything but eat. And and it left me with a grave responsibility of taking care of her. And I was very fearful, and I was very afraid, and I was very scared, and it would probably be pretty close to the magnitude of the fear that dumped into my lap the day that my ex-husband walked out on me. But the difference was this time I had a home group, I had a sponsor, and I had a relationship with God. And Alcoholics Anonymous enveloped me. We were supposed to be, or they did, they went to, it happened right when we were going to Atlanta to the International. I obviously didn't go, but, everybody was calling me from there, sending me video chats and, trying to keep me to be a part of it. And, and I can tell you that I haven't shown up and been the best daughter that I could have been because I wanted to be, but it was because I followed some simple suggestions, sometimes through strong sponsorship at that point. And some days it's a struggle. Some days it's really, really difficult. And if you've ever dealt with a family member or a loved one in that situation, you understand what I'm talking about. But I'm grateful to Alcoholics Anonymous is that, first of all, you got me to a place of where I can show up and be responsible. Because if I had to say anything about who I was before you guys, it was very irresponsible and very much not wanting to take any kind of any actions towards being a better human being. So thank you so much for my life, for my sobriety, and for being patient and listening to me tonight.